Alright, it's time to be honest. Have you ever taken a photo and then you've realized later on that maybe a part of your thumb was covering the lens, or your camera strap was hanging down into the image? Well, if that's the case, we've got a handy tool in Corel Paint Shop Pro Photo 12 that will allow you to remove parts of a photo that you really don't want. Now, it may not be a mistake. It could be like this image here that you see on my screen, where in the background it looks like there's a bit of a distraction here. It looks like a piece of rock that's drawing the focus away from my subject over here on the right hand side of the image. Now, I could come in here and use the crop tool like we talked about earlier to just chop off this side of the photo. But remember I mentioned something called the rule of thirds. And you can see that my subject here is over on the right third part of the image. That's just where I want it for a nice composition. If I was to crop off the left hand side of this photo, that rule would no longer apply and would kind of mess up my composition. So the best thing that we can do here is to remove the distraction from the photo, and that's going to mean replacing it with something. And in this case, I'm going to use my background here. So we're going to use the clone tool, the clone brush, and when I come over here to my tools toolbar and click on the clone brush, a number of options are going to appear up top. Over here in my tools options, you can see I've got a drop down for selecting the shape of my brush, and the default here is round, and you can see there's a bit of a shadow around the outside because a little bit of blending will happen. I also have some other round shapes and various sizes already selected for me. Same thing for square, and then you can see down below I've got all kinds of other shapes that could come in handy, but not in this case. We actually want to remove something from the photo and not get too artistic here. So I'm going to keep the default and click OK. But I do need to change the size. You can see when I move into the image with my clone brush, there's a little tiny circle around the brush itself, and it's so tiny that it would take a lot of work to remove this distraction. So I'm going to change the size and I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to click this drop down and use the slider and get it up around, well, let's get it up around 109. How about? As I move into my image, yes, that's much better. I've got a much larger stroke, so it's going to be a little bit easier to remove this distraction. Alright, first thing we need to do is select the source. That is what is going to replace our piece of rock here in the image. So I'm going to come over here into my background. I'm going to right click. So right clicking the mouse leaves an X, and that marks the spot. That's what's going to be used as the source to remove my distraction here. So now all I need to do is use the left mouse button to click and drag like I'm brushing over the distraction, and you can see it's being replaced with my source, which is the background. And when I release, beautiful. So now there's nothing drawing my eye away from the real subject in this photo. I was able to use a clone brush to remove an object I didn't want in the photo. That's one scenario. Here's another scenario. I'm going to just minimize this image. And I've got two other images open here in the background. I've got this one here, which is our Imagen logo found in Central Park. And then over here in another image of a telephone booth in Portugal, you can see it might be cool if we could replace this cobblestone down here with this little graphic over here on the right. Well, no problem. First thing I'm going to do though is lower the size of my clone brush. Right now it's too big. You can see it would be difficult to get into some of the finer areas here in this image. So I'm just going to bump this down using the slider down to about, well, let's go even further than 47. I'm going to go to about 32 there. Now to select my source, I just go to a different image. That's this one over here. I'm going to right click. You can see X marks the spot. Now that's the right side of this logo. I'm going to maybe just right click up here. I can change the source at any time. There's the top of the logo. And now when I come over to this image and start using my clone brush, you can see that it's going to start to replace the cobblestones in this image with my source from another image. Very cool. Get up close to the phone booth in between the tree there. And I'm just clicking and dragging with the left mouse button held down. I like that effect. We'll finish off the bottom here until we've edited the entire image. That looks good, just like that. Get some of the details over there. Very good. And we're done. So a very nice effect, borrowing from one image to bring into another image to create a totally different photo composition. So a couple of scenarios covered with the clone brush. You can see how easy it is to fix up a photo by removing a distraction or by getting artistic here and borrowing from one image and using it in another.